Hello and welcome back. You're watching Apostate Coalition, a news, education, and information channel. Before we start, I'm going to throw out a trigger warning. Tonight's topic may be a bit difficult for some of our friends, as it does involve child abuse. So if you need to keep scrolling, there will be no offense taken. This evening on The Worldly Perspective, a group of former Jehovah's Witnesses and us are going to go over a recent bill that was passed in Washington State with a special insider, Ron Pomo, a activist who recently gave a public comment about the bill. So first, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves, and we'll start off with Ron. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Hey, good to be here, guys. Glad to hang out with y'all. So I'm Ron Pomo, and I'm really happy that yesterday this bill passed, and myself and a few other XJWs got to comment on it while it was in hearings. And anyway, it's exciting to talk about it, and we're going to see how frustrating this political process can be when people bring their religion into it. So anyway.
Yeah, anything with religion and politics, there's going to be a lot of red tape to deal with, I'm sure. So thank you. We appreciate you being here. All right, Dob Stopper, you want to give just a little scotch information about you?
Sure. I'm Dob Stopper, and you can find me as that on TikTok. Sorry. Dob Stopper, you can find me as that on TikTok. Grew up Jehovah's Witness until I was about 12 years old. I managed to stop going, but my family's still Jehovah's Witness. I stopped believing in God when I was about 16, and I'm 30 now, so I have that quite a ways behind me, but it still affects my life very much every day.
Yes, very much a part of you for a very long time, if not forever.
Yeah,
it's just how we're able to manage and cope. So, well, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Dr. Time Waster, hello.
Yes, and I couldn't have said it better myself. Born and raised Jehovah's Witness. I haven't believed in it or been in it for well over 20 years of my life. So, but everyone in my family is affected by it. So, yeah. So it's deeply something that we'll just have to deal with for the rest of our lives, probably. But there's always good things to this, right? Like the life is about the journey, not the destination, right? So we meet good people along the way.
Hell yeah.
We've all met each other just on TikTok and social media and Twitter, and
some of us in real life.
Some of us actually in real life. So
true.
No.
Weird.
Sorry,
is it us?
Got hammered twice there, so I missed out on what you just said.
I just said some of us actually share grandparents too.
Oh yeah. Some of us might be related. So.
Maybe.
Maybe we're all related. Who knows? So
we're all from Adam and Eve, right?
I mean, it just depends on how far you want to go. So tonight we are going to be talking about a pretty heavy topic, but it's also an opportunity for me and hopefully for others to not only learn a little bit something about the legal process in the government, because guess what? As Jehovah's Witnesses, we don't participate in the Satan's world and government, and so who learned? None of it. None of it. And so, yeah, I still struggle with understanding things, and I'm sure that's not a unique thing to us to some degree. I think some people got out and were just went right into it, right? Other people like myself maybe didn't know it, didn't understand it, and had bigger fish to fry and had other things to learn at the time. And so now I'm learning it too. I hope you guys enjoy this, but also it's an opportunity for us to talk about something that greatly affects us all. We were all once children. We may have children, and we're really talking about how do we protect children? What are we doing here, people? How do we protect children in our society? And so one of the things that we've done, whether it's the best thing or there's a better idea out there, is we came up with mandatory reporting laws and laws to help support those laws to help protect children from being abused. There are definitions of what abuse is. There are resources for you to find out how to report, to find out if you are a mandatory reporter. And really, why aren't we all? Welcome to adulthood. You are now a mandatory reporter for seeing children being abused. If you see something, say something. Welcome. Done.
Isn't that kind of like the motto everywhere? Or like even on the subway, if you see something, say something.
Right. So anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about, I promise I won't talk all night. We're going to show a bit of the Washington state, which is currently in the process of trying to pass a stricter mandatory reporting law. We'll go into a little bit of detail about that, and we have a video of them discussing it on the floor. And so there were a couple of senators in the state that, I don't know, they have, whether it is a emotional or unemotional take on child abuse, and this is where the trigger warning comes in, it can be difficult to hear some of the things that people are saying, whether or not you agree with it or not. We might be hearing some of that tonight. So anyways, welcome. We'll try and keep it a little light.
Trust me, you're going to hear it.
And raise your hand if you cope with trauma and uncomfortable situations by laughing inappropriately and telling bad jokes. Okay, good. I'm in good company. Okay, I promise I'll try and keep it to a minimum.
Yes, I'm gonna.
Yeah, we laugh so that we don't murder or cry or.
It's just easier to cope with. So.
Yeah.
True that.
Some of this, I think, will be ranting about what people say. So. Yeah.
Maybe we'll make that was a different topic at a different time.
Well, I'm glad I get to watch it with you guys because I was watching it myself, just kind of going, I'm gonna.
I missed it live, but a couple of my friends that were involved and also commented during one of the hearings were kind of like live texting in a group chat, and I was working, and so I missed it all. But yeah, it's something to watch for sure. It's crazy.
Indeed. Well, do you think we should just start out by watching it, or did you want to maybe explain exactly what the clergy-penitent privilege is? And, because some people might be like, for the first time hearing this,
maybe
what the heck is it? How does it affect me?
Background. So it's kind of this story starts with XJWs. That's what's pretty cool about this. Like Dr. Time Waster was saying, we're all kind of new to this. We didn't grow up being involved in politics, and some of us are learning on the fly. But the reason we are here where we are now is because an XJW, a PMO XJW, reached out to multiple investigative reporters across the state and said, here are people that you can contact to talk about the abuse they suffered, these scandals in Spokane, Washington, Western Washington, all over. And a reporter picked it up, and he wrote a couple stories about some previous lawsuits, some current lawsuits that are pending, and other victims in Jehovah's Witnesses that suffered child abuse. And sorry, I don't know what words we're not supposed to say on streaming, so I apologize.
You can say whatever you want to say.
Okay. I don't know if that's all about monetization or whatever. So I'm just going to
Yeah, I don't even know the rules. So,
but yeah.
We're just not going to ask permission.
Yeah, so Investigate West, Wilson, I believe it's Wilson Cicerone, did some reporting on abuse cover-ups among Jehovah's Witnesses, and some state senators read that reporting and decided to do something about it. And particular Senator Noelle Frame is the prime sponsor of the bill. And she brought a bill last session, SB 5280, to introduce clergy mandated reporting, because Washington State is one of 5 states in the nation that does not have clergy as mandated reporters. There are mandated reporters in Washington, teachers, doctors, the typical ones you would think of. Dr. Time Waster's mandatory reporter in her career. Right. It's amazing how many people are, but it's also shocking who isn't. So last year, the bill went through the Senate, and the House of Representatives in Washington introduced an amendment to close the clergy-penitent privilege loophole, which all the religions use to say especially Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, use to say that any communication to an elder is a privileged communication we do not have to report. And so the House amended that to remove that loophole, and then it failed to pass the Senate. They didn't confirm with that amendment. So this year, for several months leading up to this current session, Senator Frame and others were working behind the scenes on what can we do to make this bill better, that everyone will accept it. Because the biggest hurdles was, of course, the Catholic Church and their lobbyists and their Catholic Conference of Washington. Shocker.
What?
Were opposed to this. And they framed it in their media, and other senators framed it as this is an attack on the Catholic Church, which is just bullshit, because this is about protecting children. And It was brought forward because of very specific examples in other religions. But those religions use the loopholes that the Catholic Church champions, So anyway, this bill now has a compromise. It's very narrowly defined definition of what a clergy penitent privilege is. And it basically is the Catholic model of confession, 1-to-1. Someone goes into a box, I don't know what they call it, a confessional box, and speaks to their priest or whatever you call him, and gets something off their chest. That is still a privileged communication, because they understand that in their faith, that is a seal that they cannot break. So that's defined as a 1-to-1 communication. And if there's any other involvement of somebody else, if it's written down, if they consult with anyone else in the church, that seal is broken. So the Jehovah's Witness model, the Mormon model, all of those do not fit the definition of a seal of confession, which, they don't have. It's not a tenet of their religion. Anyway, at least 3 elders will know about someone coming forward. Most child abuse in Jehovah's Witnesses is reported by a parent or an abuse victim when they're older, or somebody else who's concerned, and then it launches an investigation. It's not someone coming forward to clear their conscience, I don't think, very often, not among Jehovah's Witnesses. And then they call lawyers back at headquarters. The whole elder body might know about stuff. There's multiple people involved, so it does not fit. Jehovah's Witnesses will have to be mandated reporters, at least the elders, under this bill. So that's really good. But there is still that compromise. But the compromise is good, that it also has, at the end of it, I wouldn't say at the end of it, but as part of this compromise bill, it includes a duty to warn. That if in part, even the knowledge of a child being in imminent danger, or recent abuse,
I have
they have okay, if you want to read it, that'd be good. I don't have it in front of me. I'm just going from memory.
That the senator quoted directly, where he said, "I have no problem with the language of," and he reads the section, "a member of this clergy has duty to warn the department or law enforcement when they have reasonable cause to believe that a child is in imminent risk of being abused or neglected." And he said, "I have no problem with that part, but what part he did have was, even if that belief is informed by the information obtained in part as a result of a penitential communication during confession." So that's the part they wanted to strike. And
Yeah,
so far they have, right?
no, they haven't, and they won't. I don't think
not
they
that
will.
last bit.
No. So he brought that bill forward, or he brought that amendment forward just today, and it was not passed. It was overwhelmingly rejected. And the wording he wanted was going to cripple the bill. It was going to make the loophole again. That there's no way to think otherwise about it. And that's ridiculous and offensive and immoral. And that guy should have some shame, but it doesn't appear he does. I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, duty to warn. That means that they don't even have to report the person who came and confessed to the police. They just have to say, we suspect that this child, a child, is in danger. You got to do something about it. And, then the people who are trained to deal with that will go deal with it, hopefully. So,
and that's another issue.
Isn't
the people who are trained, how well are they trained? And if there's an influx, are they going to handle it from there? What's the steps?
Yeah, this doesn't fix all the problems.
There's so much more to do. Yeah. Would you say? I'm sorry.
I was talking for. I just said the enforcement of any policy or law is key. So how is it interpreted and how is it enforced? So while we want to make sure that we have good language of the law so that it doesn't get misapplied as best we can, it also matters in how is it being interpreted by those who actually do something. So one of the senators brings it up in this video where he's like, so, and then what happens? Like, I see something and I say something, and then what happens? And then just made it sound like that's where the story ends and nothing goes anywhere. And I was like, I mean, it's a good question. You want to ask those questions, but I don't think that's where the story ends. Somebody does something. Somebody checks on the child and sees how they're doing, and then makes an assessment from an objective perspective of just getting a warning. And by the way, can't that be an anonymous thing? So like,
it can, yeah.
A priest could be like, hey, this guy he's definitely going to abuse this child, do something, and then not say who he is and hang up the phone, right?
I believe it can. I'd have to check the definitions in Washington law, but I know other places are that way. And even Watchtower had instructions for when elders would be instructed to report from the legal department of the branch. They would tell elders to go find a payphone, not say who they were, and make the report. But two of them had to do it so that they could corroborate each other that they didn't call. But it's, I don't know. Did I say the wrong word? I don't know.
No. I just wanted to say that out loud because some people might just be listening. Isle Rock Noel says, I saw it and it was awesome by Ron. I felt like one of the guys there was defending religion pretty strong, like strangely strong. Yes, I 100% concur with that.
And last year, there was a lot of frustrating testimony last year too during this process.
I remember it well.
A bishop was there the same day that I and another XJW friend and even Mark O'Donnell gave public comment. And it's wild. It was especially frustrating how much time and attention was given to the Catholics who were commenting too. It's almost like you would think that they're the only religion in the state when these lawmakers were talking to them. It's absurd. So
I did think it was hilarious.
Most well organized.
Yeah, wealthy, most well organized for sure.
I did enjoy how everybody was throwing the J-Dubs under the bus. Well, we're here because the J-Dubs.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's all their fault.
Yeah, last year there's an ex-JW lawmaker that what she said was kind of shocking, honestly. It was very confusing.
Agree. I was a little frustrated, actually.
Yeah.
I did think it was funny, though, that in the district where the convention hall is at.
Yeah.
That was where she was from.
And, I understand these people are playing to their base and their constituents. but still, it's very frustrating. So
Somebody might have got a little payoff there. Just saying.
I think the pressure of
Allegedly.
religion is more than money, right? Like
Mhm.
there's so much pressure around traditions and religion that people don't need buyouts to side with it. They're desperate to side with it sometimes. It's tantalizing. It's telling you everything you want to hear. But I'm sorry, I digress. Anyways, so we've got this bill. We've got these senators, and they're all sort of debating about it. We can watch some of it if you want. If you guys want to like rage out a little bit on Phil Fortunato, whatever his name is.
Yeah, just a little.
You guys want to rage out?
I think so. I think we should.
I did want to just say something as we watch these, because he talks, and then Noelle Frame, or is that how you say her name? She's the one who kind of championed this. And, they both of them at some point get emotional, right? Like you can tell they're very emotional about this. Phil also gets emotional, but what she got emotional about didn't surprise me. What he got emotional about kind of made me go, ugh.
Yeah.
So we can watch it. I'll just shut up now. I just wanted to say that as we go through it.
When is this from?
This is from yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
And I think we could skip to like at least a minute in or so. They go back and forth about Bill stuff, and it's nonsense.
Boring. Boring. Okay, let me.
Yeah, he starts speaking. Yeah, within the first minute or so, I think.
Like it's literally at like 1 minute or so.
Okay. You're more prepared than I am, and I made this video and uploaded
right before we started.
Okay, here we go.
Few small portions of the bill, if I may.
Please proceed.
So in the bill, it basically says the reporting requirement in A of this subsection also applies to members of the clergy, except with regard to information that the member of the clergy obtains in the member's professional character as a religious or spiritual advisor, when the information is obtained solely in a context of penitential communication, basically during confession. So it says that a clergy is exempt under that provision, but there's 18 words at the very, very bottom on subsection 6. And if I may read that subsection, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
Regardless of the previous subsection, a member of this clergy has a duty to warn the department or law enforcement when they have reasonable cause to believe that a child is in imminent risk of being abused or neglected. Then the following piece is the objectionable piece. Even if that belief is informed by the information obtained in part as a result of a penitential communication during confession. So basically, if a priest hears something in confession and it's corroborated by something outside of confession, he has a duty to warn if he believes that there's imminent risk, which is kind of a it's subjective opinion. So he doesn't know something's going to happen. He simply believes that something might happen. Now, the problem I have with this, and some of the other Catholic members of the Senate believe, that this, and in consultation with other bishops and priests, aside from what we will call the Catholic Conference, they also believe that this violates the seal of confession. Big, huge thing in the Catholic Church. Testimony was, if a priest divulges something that they hear in confession, they are excommunicated immediately. Big, huge deal. And what this basically says is I have knowledge that I gained in confession. I learned something outside of confession that I believe might happen. I have a duty to warn. Now, how does that work exactly? So even if we take out the seal of confession out of it, how exactly does that work? I'm going to go and I'm going to report to law enforcement that, hey, I think this guy might be doing something. No. How does that work? What's law enforcement supposed to do? What's the agency supposed to do? Or the department supposed to do? So I don't quite understand how that works. But if we add into that the violation of the seal of confession, which there's 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church, we eliminate this, we only have 6. This is a big deal for me personally. But I want you to think of the ramifications of this.
And if you ever just want me to pause, just make sure you
speak up.
This is where he gets emotional.
My first
Already?
real quick, I'll say is if this does become law, I see no future where it doesn't get challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court because of the reason that he is outlining.
Yeah.
Like, Catholic Church is definitely going to do all they can.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, that's what the Catholics threatened last year. I mean, the Catholic Conference isn't opposing this right now. They're neutral on this part of the bill, but last year when they were trying to eliminate any loopholes that they would use, they were going to threaten to go, their priests were going to go to prison and it was going to be a First Amendment issue and it's going to be challenged and all of that.
They were going to have to commit suicide because they're being forced to break their commandments to God or something. I don't know. I don't get it, but yes. Oh, sorry.
I believe there are
breaking the seal of confession. Yeah.
I believe there are 6 or 7 states or territories in this country that have clergy mandated reporters with no loophole.
Texas, even one of them?
Texas is one of them. And so where's the Catholics screaming and taking Texas to the Supreme Court? I haven't seen it.
Right.
If they have, it's failed.
Really?
Is God's Holy Spirit only over certain states now?
I think it's they're just trying to scare people and they're bullying people by threatening that. But it will be interesting to see if any of these religions challenge it in the future, for sure. So, but I wanted to comment. You'll see this several times throughout this video. These lawmakers don't even understand what they're talking about, and they're sharing such strong opinions about it. They don't understand how mandated reporting works. They don't understand why someone would report a child abuser. It's mind-boggling how these people can have these weird opinions on it.
They might personally have an interest.
What'd you say?
Me or Jillian? Or
Dob Supper.
It makes me think that they have a personal interest.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're projecting just a little too hard.
Yeah.
Just a scotch.
They're very invested in this because it directly affects them. And let's face it, the argument that I've seen them make, and really what it boils down to is, okay, so if they break the seal, the seal of, what was it?
Confession.
What does that mean? Like, and what is the consequence? What are we really saying?
Their fear is that they'll be removed. They'll have to, I guess, get.
Yeah. They'll be excommunicated.
That will happen to them. That they're gonna.
So they're gonna get disfellowship from their church because they broke a church rule.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
To protect a child.
So shouldn't that go right back onto the backs of the Catholic Church? Like, why would you excommunicate somebody for doing the right thing if the law says that's the right thing and God puts people in place to make these laws? Then it's actually by his divine judgment that these are in place.
I mean, if it does completely go against their religion, at what point do we stop
caring, respecting?
Accepting the religions. I mean, I've had my own idea for a few religions to get around laws, and I don't know why people haven't done them yet.
I mean, if you've thought of it, there's probably someone out there who's done it.
True. Absolutely true.
It's about to get more frustrating. We'll just.
All right. Do you want me to keep playing now?
Yeah, please continue. Yeah.
Here we go.
Somebody does something that's nobody in this room, nobody on this planet wants children to be hurt. You will hear some testimony or some statements, if only one child, or you will hear statements saying, if somebody knew something and it was your child, what would you do? But again, that's not what the bill says. What the bill says is, if you think something might happen. So it doesn't say you know something will happen. It says if you think something might happen. So nobody wants children to be harmed. I once doorbelled a woman, and she said, I'm opposed to the Republican position on guns. And I said, well, I see your grandkids are visiting here. If somebody was to threaten your grandchildren with harm and you had a gun, would you shoot them? She goes, absolutely, I'd shoot them dead. She would do that to protect her grandchildren. And there's not a person here that would not lay their life down to protect their child. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is somebody's subjective opinion that they
believe. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
This really has nothing to do with the scenario whatsoever.
Yeah,
he's the one who gave that scenario to her, but
right.
Supposedly, which I think is one of those Jehovah's Witness things to do through theocratic warfare, where they just create a scenario, and I don't think this even happened. But you were the one who created it and brought it up, and now we're saying it isn't an equal argument. Yes, you're actually right about that.
Playing to his base, though, probably talks about guns all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, sorry. I just had to
they believe something would happen, and then at the same time violating that seal of confession. What this amendment simply does is say you have a duty to warn. You have all the other obligations of the bill. The rest of the bill is fine. This similar bill passed this chamber 49-0. Went to, and I would vote for this bill today with this amendment on it if we took out that offending words. It's a good bill. It clarifies something. I don't actually think it's needed because we already have clergy and others as mandatory reporters. They're already included.
Not on the list. I'm looking at it right now.
No, we don't.
I believe if you accept this amendment,
Wrong.
It exempts that seal of confession and lets the rest of the bill, which everybody here would vote 100% on, to go through. And without this amendment, Mr. President, I cannot vote for this bill. Thank you.
Further remarks, Senator Frame.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So there's several things that he said wrong, and my brain's, the alcohol's kicking in. But where to go?
Right. So much wrong there.
Yeah. He doesn't understand mandated reporting. And he's also framing it only from his knowledge as a Catholic in the Catholic Church, saying that they are already mandated reporters. That's what he believes the Catholic Church has told him, is that their priests are mandated reporters. That's not under Washington state law. That's policy. That's church policy, that they dictate what they do and don't do. And who knows how well that system actually works.
Right.
If you took a poll of most active Jehovah's Witnesses, thanks to those articles from 2019, they think all elders report child abusers all the time. They don't, but that's what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, though, we need laws like this to force people to do the right thing. So anyway, it's frustrating that he's so wrong and so confident about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Standing today asking that we vote this amendment down. And I want to really speak to several pieces that Senator Fortunato spoke to. I agree that nobody wants to see a child hurt. The question right now is if we are going to use the power of our vote, the tool in front of us right now, to make that reality. Mr. President, the amendment being offered that we are discussing is not supported by the Catholic Conference. The Catholic Conference supports the underlying bill. They support the underlying bill, and on this provision, they are neutral, Mr. President, because it is part of a very delicate threading of the needle compromise that they have made with me as the prime sponsor and of representatives of the survivors of the Jehovah's Witness sexual abuse cover-up that I'll speak to in a moment on final passage. The amendment before you, colleagues, simply says, if you are a member of the clergy and you have a reasonable belief that a child is at imminent risk of harm, you do something about it? Senator Fortunato said, what do they do? How does that work? They tell somebody to go check on the child. You don't need to know who the perpetrator is. You don't even need to give a lot of detail. Our underlying statute says for our mandatory reporters, you call it into DCYF, you call it into law enforcement, you tell them what you know. If you don't know, you don't tell them. The point is check on the child. Folks, I cannot accept that any member of our clergy would stand on the sidelines when they know that a child is about to be hurt, and they would do nothing about it. The Catholic Conference does not. The Catholic Conference is neutral on this provision because well, I can't speak for them, but what I will say is what I believe is that if a member of clergy suspects that something is about to happen to that child, and they hear something in penitential communication that further informs that belief about something that may happen in the future, they are not breaking the seal and reporting what they know has happened in the past. They are telling law enforcement and DCYF, I have a reasonable belief that this child is about to be harmed and I just need you to go check on them. This is a very, very important part of this compromise legislation. I am asking this body to vote this down. And again, the Catholic Conference supports the underlying bill as is and does not support this amendment. Thank you.
Further remarks, Senator Patton.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to indicate that everybody in this body supported the bill last year when it left the Senate with this provision on confession not in it.
I just want to applaud.
Spokane Valley.
Yes, please talk about yes. Yeah, she was awesome. So well put together. You can tell she was a little bit emotional, but she pulled it right back in, kept it pushing.
This guy has a great voice. I would like to hear him sing.
He reminds me of an old-timey carnival.
He looks like Gollum.
He is like a character.
Precious.
I just want to point out that Spokane Valley is different than the city of Spokane. The city of Spokane has its problems, but is not Spokane Valley. It is a very interesting subject, and I feel like my little Pimo might have been the one who actually told me about this. So, anyways.
A lot of friends and family from there. And it's a very religious community.
This guy. So this guy, I think, is going to make a point that I was kind of reading through the comments, and I think Jay made the point that the Catholics are making a point about the penitent privilege because another tragedy that will happen. Is if word gets out that they can't go to the priest and confess their sins, then people will stop coming to the church, is what I mean.
And they'll lose the benefit.
People will become immoral.
And they'll lose the benefit of the counseling that they would get from the priest.
Well, that's what they say. I don't really know what the priests say. So I can't speak to what their education is. They mention that priests are getting education, but what is that education? I don't know. Is it a certified education that's the same that me as a mandatory reporter have to go through annually in my job? Because I do, and that's my job offering it. So I assume they have to educate their employees, and who's watching the watchers, who's paying attention to how they're doing this as well. So, I mean, like, the devil's in the details here. So it's one thing to say, oh, well, they're working on it and they're all mandatory reporters, but like, you're trying to foster the culture. I get it. It's great. That's a good step forward, and I'm willing to hope for the best, but I want to see the receipts is all I'm saying. And other
this is a probability. It's a probability that education could be something, so silly like what is JW elder education.
Right. Like, if their education is anything like the creation book we were going over.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, we want you to qualify all of this, please. So what exactly, define it. What does it mean?
Right. I just don't believe that. I believe they believe that what they're doing is good. But, data, when we track data, we look at, like, when we do like drug trials and stuff, it's not only like, was it safe, but did it actually do something? And was that something significant enough to warrant all, bothering taking all of this medication, right? So then once we do think it does, then we still test it more, and then we see how people do with it, and then people report back what's going on, and then we figure out, well, it works great for this situation, but not for these, right? But we get that data, and then we change how we practice. And so I don't think they collect data. I think they hide it. I think that's what Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. I think it's just a shameful thing, right? It's a horrible thing to find out someone in your community is doing. And the instinct, unfortunately, that these kinds of cultures have is to
quiet it down. Yeah. Hush, sweep it under the rug, pay people off to be quiet. We've heard it all. Everything. All right, should I keep playing, or did you have something, Ron?
No, do you want to listen to this guy?
I don't know. He might piss people
Play
off.
it for a little bit. Yeah, we can.
I want to hear the voice one more time.
So we all want to do something. We all
want to do
clergy.
something.
They are mandatory reporting now.
Yeah, they're mandatory.
So what the amendment is just getting about is the seal of confession. And I want to indicate that even though this is offered by the good lady from the 36th district, this provision,
he's just wrong and proud.
Mm-hmm.
Loud.
I really believe it is counterproductive for what we want.
Yeah.
Because if somebody were to actually go to confession and confess this abuse or something that would be covered under this bill, the priest is going to tell them that they need to report. They're going to be missing the counseling and the positive behavior of trying to get this person treatment, get this person put in jail, whatever it might be. They're going to miss that because the priests cannot break the seal of confession and remain a priest. They just simply can't do it. And it's not.
I actually know that reference now too.
I mean, it's not part seal of confession. It's the whole thing. You can't compartmentalize it. And it's just not practical. So I don't think the Catholic Conference, some of the people in it had thought this all the way through. I have spoken to key officials in the Spokane Diocese, priest, the Vicar General,
right?
And they say this is not workable. Priests have said that they're going to keep their vows and they would go to jail if this ever came up. Now, my own belief, Mr. President, is this is not ever going to come up, that it's a false hope that we're doing something here because it will not be implemented in this form if indeed somebody confesses. If the word is out that it might be revealed, why would somebody confess it? So I think under the current system, there are more of these abusers that are going to be reported, that are going to be held accountable. And that is what we all want. That is what we all want. So I
want to see the data on that.
Yeah. Well, here's a little bit of a data on that. Let's see. New Orleans priest confessed to abusing children. He returned to work and was never charged. Priests confessing to priests.
Yes. That's the loophole I was thinking of is wouldn't they just, if I was a priest abusing a child, wouldn't they just join the loophole and be like, tell another priest and confess my sins, and now nobody can tell.
There's a headline. This is a couple years old. It was back in 2020. Catholic priests in Australia confessed 1,500 times to abusing children.
Oh, God.
Victims say mandated reporting could have saved him. Over a 25-year period, every other week or every week, I don't know what the math works out to there, but several times a month he was going and confessing to abusing children, and he was still a priest. So if you are going to accept confessions from child abusers and not do a goddamn thing about it, why the fuck does it matter if they break the seal of, like, this whole logic is just so stupid and infuriating.
It's illogical.
I can't even get my words out, but it's like, if you're not going to do anything, who cares that if they stop coming to confess their sins? Right. You're not going to help a child anyway. So
maybe it'll be a good thing
grown-ups to do something.
Yeah, maybe it's a good thing to keep the pedo out of the congregation. Maybe that. I don't know. That might be a saving grace. Be harder for them to find somebody and prey upon them.
Yeah, it's
And I think
ridiculous.
what we're all trying to say here is that in no way do we realistically think that laws and rules like this are going to capture every possible instance where a child could be abused, right? Then we're talking about overdoing it and everybody reporting everything and then overwhelming the system and then nothing good happening from it either.
Mhm.
But what we are talking about are finding hotspots of activity, right? Like predators will go to the area where prey exists. And if we've created all these legal loopholes for people to hide behind, then what better place, especially if it then exposes it to children? So teachers are mandatory reporters because that's where children get funneled through. Doctors, dentists, nurses, pharmacists, medical examiners, psychologists, social services, law enforcement, juvenile probation officers. Like the list goes on and on and on. But priests, clergy, no religious organization is on the list. And I think even if they were, say, a preschool, a Catholic preschool, a Catholic school, now we're getting into the realm of what is going to take priority here, right? And so if you have priests who are taking confession on a school ground, that's concerning to me. I don't know, like where do we draw the line here? But
And it's this it's all harmful in so many different ways, but Jim Walsh, who's another just terrible person last year who was opposing this bill, his argument too was about, this is an attack on the Catholic faith. People aren't going to come to confession anymore. They aren't going to have the freedom to clear their conscience. The freedom to clear their conscience was put above protecting children from abusers, from pedophiles. And this whole idea of Christianity, Catholic faith, that their goal is to save the soul of any and everybody. And they put so much emphasis on getting an abuser to get to heaven or have a clear conscience versus protecting multiple children, probably. It's just offensive and disgusting.
Yeah,
and
the priority is whack to me. Completely whack.
And it's not just the Catholics, it's the Mormons, it's the JWs. So much more attention is paid to the sinner than the victims.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the problem too, is that they see it as a sin, not a crime. So
Exactly. 100%.
And the two witness rule is a problem because it ends up favoring the predator over the victim, right? And it is more likely to have let me make sure I say this right, a false negative than a false positive. Wait, we're more likely to not believe the victim and the victim be telling the truth in these scenarios. And so it's disproportionately affecting or benefiting, privileging the people in the position of power. Again, nobody wants to think that their, coworkers or family members are possibly harming children in this way. Nobody
Statistically, they are the ones.
It is. Yes. Why? Because it is the easiest place to access children in a isolated, alone, private place, right? And so that's why, right? But that's why we should just be providing education to everyone as an adult of how to look for signs of abuse. And every adult should be a mandatory reporter.
It should. Yeah.
Done. Solved. Bingo.
I am curious. Several people have brought it up. I don't think it will. I think it would probably be challenged. But technically, all Jehovah's Witnesses are ordained ministers. They claim that, in their literature.
Right.
All JWs are ordained ministers.
Wait, all or elders?
Everybody.
all
We're
baptized
all
in the
ministers.
religion
I wasn't or am I still an ordained minister? Like,
All baptized people that are still
active. Yeah. Like you could actually technically, give a wedding talk if you weren't a servant or an elder, because technically you were an ordained minister of your religion. So
like
anyway, I doubt it will apply, but it would be interesting to try and see if they do fit by the definition of the new law. So anyway,
That would be amazing.
someone else brought that up, and I thought it was interesting.
That would be hilarious. Could you imagine? And then you couldn't deny it because
It's
it's
like
in all their
making
literature.
All JWs mandatory reporters,
Oof.
not just elders.
Oof. That would be a hot one. Shall we continue watching video? What would you all like to do?
Yeah, I think once they actually get into discussing the bill, Fortuno and whatever his name is, and Noel speak again, and I'd like to talk about that.
You want to skip
About
the
that?
rest of
Do you want to skip this
Dobby?
pattern?
Yeah.
Sorry, you said Davi. Now I can't unsee.
The precious. Do you want to go back to
Go back
Noel?
to when she starts talking about the bill. Yeah, there you go.
Uh-oh.
Somewhere there.
I just want to offer, Mr. President, the exact scenario Senator Patton just described. That is protected within penitential communication in the bill. Second, I need to correct that no, clergy are not currently mandated reporters in Washington state. We are one of only 5 states in this nation that does not have a mandatory reporter requirement for clergy. If a member of the clergy is acting in a different duty, such as a teacher that is a mandated reporter in our law, then they are a mandated reporter, but they are not required to report in their role strictly as a religious leader. That is the whole point of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
She answered my question.
Senator Fortunato.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. President. The Catholic Church has done more to train their priests and to ferret out any problems within the priesthood than I believe any other organization.
I want receipts.
Donald
It is
Trump say that all
required
the time.
in this state
Nobody has been more
by
than
the
me.
Catholic Conference, which is to all the bishops. It is required that they report. So whether or not there's a law, it
To be
doesn't
fair,
matter.
it's probably
Okay.
true they have
They
done
are
the most
required as a priest
because they have
to
the
do
largest
this. And the
problem.
Catholic Church
Right.
has done that within its own organization. In addition, I do want to touch on a couple of things. How is somebody in law enforcement going to go and check on a child? They check on a child, the child's fine. Because the bill says if someone thinks there is imminent risk of something, you have to notify law enforcement and the agency, the department. So they do. Let's just say they do notify.
Okay.
We think something might happen. That's what this is about. You have to report if you think something might happen.
Yes.
So you go to law enforcement. We suspect something might happen. Law enforcement goes and checks on the child. Child's fine. There's nothing wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, just because somebody thinks they have this intent, whatever. So it's a subjective thing. The other thing that we're kind of missing in
But
this
you didn't-
equation is a person
I'm
that
not-
does this. The Senator Patton touched on.
Okay,
right,
because
right?
I'm like,
Time out.
but you didn't conclude. You didn't make any conclusion.
he just like completely skipped.
Yeah, he just like brought up a point and then just like, and then another thing.
And another thing. 'cause I don't
And
know where I'm
another
going with
thing. Like, okay, they check on the child and the child is fine. Okay. That's a good thing. Or they could check on the child and the child might show signs of abuse, or the child might say, yes, something has been happening to me. That's another possibility, sir. Did you forget that part?
Yeah.
And here's the deal. I've not, thankfully, been in a situation where I felt the need to report a child's abuse situation. But if you call and report, it's not like you go, hey, you got to go check out this kid at this house. Something's going on. Bye. Like it's not a legit complaint, right? You have to have more information than that. Like, what is your concern specifically? And they'll take that. And then when they do go, again, granted, we're hoping trained individuals who are going, who understand their role. I think if we
And,
all
and
cared
that's
and
another
had
whole
time,
thing in the system that
training.
needs to be fixed, right? Like there's just so many
And if that's the argument then
kinks.
this Republican is making, is that the police don't know how to identify an abused child, then that is a bigger issue than can we at least make people report when they see something. We're starting at the bottom here. But if he's saying that he doesn't trust the police to be able to tell if a child is going to be abused, then maybe that's where we should be having this debate and talking about what we're going to do and how we could do that.
Exactly. That might be an inkling to another part of the problem in the system. The system is broken.
Yeah.
Shall I continue? Did you have something, Ron?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Did you play?
That ability to get that counseling. The guy obviously feels bad. He's
Does
having
he?
inner turmoil. That's why he goes to confession. Goes to confession. He gets the benefit of having that counseling from the priest.
That's a big assumption.
In an anonymous situation. Some of our fellow members said to me, oh, come on, Phil, you have kind of a distinctive voice. They're going to know it's you. Every Catholic knows if you do something really bad, you don't go to your own priest. You go somewhere else.
The fuck?
He smiles about it when he says that.
The
problem solved then. They can report it. They don't know who you are.
I think someone doth protest too much for sure.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you just told us.
I love where you paused this, by the way. This is perfect.
He's like, so I was choking them out. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
He finally learned how to do the Darth Vader force.
I missed the part that I wanted to comment on. Sorry, I just cut you off too. But the senator that's sitting behind this guy, when he started going off on how the Catholic Church has done more than any, you should have seen that guy's face behind him. Like he captured his attention. Like, did he just say what I think he said?
Like, no, you didn't.
Well, now people have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, you go back. You'll find it on my YouTube channel.
On your own. Go to Ron's channel. That's where we're actually watching this from Ron's channel. So if you're interested, you can find that there on, look, Ron, come on, y'all, go follow Ron. He only has 288 subscribers. The fuck? That's what I say about that. The fuck? Go give him a like and sub. Okay, but all right, this guy's done choking people out. Let's keep going.
Specifically for that purpose. So now,
for that purpose, okay.
And Senator Patton touched on this. Somebody that may be having a real problem and may be prone to this type of behavior, which everybody believes is despicable. If they know they're going to be reported, they're simply not going to go. I mean, so it's counterproductive.
You sure about that?
The amendment fixes that. It allows that person with that problem that has that inner guilt. That's why he's going to confession, to get the benefit of that priest and his counsel to turn himself in. Mr. President, if you go into confession and you say, I robbed a bank, the priest is not going to say, hey, great, keep the money, just put a big deposit and put a large contribution in the basket in the church. They're going to say, give the money back, make it right, make restitution. You're not going to get absolved of your sins if you continue to say, I'm just going to keep doing it. It's counterproductive and it's a lack of understanding. And if the Catholic Conference, some of the Catholic Conference, not the whole thing, because everybody we talk to, I've been talking to priests and bishops and whatever, all agree this is totally unworkable. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to get reported. It's a subjective thing. So I'm asking the body to please consider adopting this amendment. It will strengthen, as Senator Crane points out, it's a decent bill. It outlines things. It has very good descriptions of things, what has to happen.
He's just
I'm all for that.
By that last
I just don't like those 18 words. And with those 18 words, I cannot vote for this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah, his emotional responses are not the same as the women,
right?
And a couple, and I even think a male senator later on, showed some emotion, and it's just not even on the same topic.
I'm baffled by his passion about creating scenarios than just guiding those scenarios to outcome to make it just look like it's counterproductive. This isn't going to help anybody. Look at all these scenarios I gave you. This isn't, bro. That was just the worst testimony I've ever heard, or whatever that's called. That was pretty pathetic.
It's going to be interesting when this goes to the House and people like Jim Walsh start commenting on this, because last year he tried to argue that just Catholics in general will stop coming to confession because this breaks the seal of confession. Like, this bill is about mandated reporting for child sexual abuse or child abuse in general. And if that's going to have a large impact on your denomination's confessions, then you might want to look into that a little closer.
Right. If it's going to undermine people's trust in the church, I think that people's trust is undermined because you're mishandling child abuse. I think that's why most people are leaving, because they don't feel that they can trust you to protect them from predators. That's how I see it. But they see it the other way. They want to protect the predators. And I think that is because there's a lot of inside handshaking, you priests protecting priests protecting people
Don't
who
ask,
have
don't
government
tell.
positions. Exactly. Like, they have this loophole where everybody can kind of just confess their sins and keep it moving. And he brought up a scenario where, if somebody keeps doing the same thing over and over, and he mentioned robbing a bank. Well, if he's robbing a bank over and over, that's a pattern. That's a problem. Like, he shouldn't be continuously going to confession over and over, having abused people. But that's why a preacher, whatever they are, pastor, whoever's taking the confession, really should have the ability to say, hey, something's happening here. Welfare check. Anyway, sorry.
I think my little Pimo said it in the comments earlier as well, which was all they have to do is put a disclaimer out there on the confessional that if you are confessing to, or if you are admitting to actively is what this bill.
Oh, right. Yeah.
This bill is only for the active risk, not confession. So even if they were to say, if you are actively abusing children, we're obligated to report this. So then you're covering yourself, right, from people feeling the sting and shock of, hey, I thought I could tell you all my secrets and you weren't allowed to tell anybody. By the way, has anybody checked on priests? Because that sounds like a shitty job. People are going to dump all of their horrible problems and terrible crimes on you, and you can't say anything. All you can do is beg me to stop doing it, and I'm just going to keep. What if that's their kink and they just get off on the priest begging them to stop doing it because they can't tell anybody? You torture somebody that way. Good Lord. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah, it's way easier to be a JW elder, because then they can just come home and unload on their wives and they'll spread it all around. So.
The joys of being an elder's wife or ministerial servant's wife, right? Okay, shall we continue? Do you want me to skip anything, or do you want
to get to where Noelle actually starts talking again?
Oh God, that woman! I just wanted
to... She was
like, look, if your hair looks like this,
I understand.
There's a possibility. Look, church lady. There's a possibility that maybe if you are still in the 1970s, like dressing, hairstyle, this might be not the century for you to be passing bills. I'm sorry.
All of these channels, actually on everything, whenever it shows a senator or congressperson's name and what party they're with, it also needs to show their age.
Yeah, it really should.
I think she's my my senator, and I didn't vote for her.
The one from Moses Lake, that one?
Yes, that's the district I'm in, apparently.
That's your boo, Tyler?
Anybody that voted for their senator, that's far as I know.
Is that your gilf, Grandma?
Tyler's got the cougars, the cougar mom.
Actually, that's a gilf. That's a great grandma.
Oh, yeah.
That's the double G. That's the original G. Oh, sorry. Okay.
So ordered. Senate Bill 6298 on third reading and final passage. Remarks, Senator Frame.
So,
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start,
sorry.
Mr. President, by
No,
acknowledging
go right ahead.
that
I just want to explain this whole 30 minutes, 32 minutes was them debating the amendment, and they just did not pass it. They struck it down. They did not accept the amendment, so which is a good thing.
Right. They weren't happy about that.
Yeah.
It was offensive. So offensive.
survivors are watching these proceedings right now. They've been texting me during the proceedings, and I acknowledge and thank them for telling their stories to the press, and that's how it came to my knowledge. So thank you to the survivors who are watching. Mr. President, I'm going to say what I've said before, that children need trusted adults, and particularly when something is happening in their life that's very, very wrong. They need to know that when they tell the adults in their life, that those adults will help them and they'll make the harm stop. The legislation before you ensures that children can count on their religious leaders to help them in these moments by adding clergy and other religious leaders, as defined in this bill, as mandated reporters of child abuse and neglect here in Washington state. As you've heard today, Mr. President, this is a compromise bill, and it includes a very narrowly and specifically defined exception for penitential communication, a careful compromise crafted with the Catholic Conference, who opposed the final version of the bill last year, but came to the table with me and survivors to craft the bill that's before you. I also want to acknowledge and thank the reporting of Investigate West, who in late 2022 really brought to light decades of abuse that happened within the Jehovah's Witness community here in Washington state, that covered up just years of sexual abuse of children. I want to thank my co-sponsor, Senator Kaufman, for helping me to get a definition of elder defined in this bill this year in consultation with the tribes and ensuring with survivors that it covered the totality of what we saw in the Jehovah's Witness community, that the kinds of cover-up of abuse would no longer be allowed under this bill with that new definition. And Mr. President, I am proud to stand here and champion this cause. I take no delight in telling my story over and over and over, but I do it, Mr. President, because I have the privilege of serving in this body, and the tool before me to make change is my vote. As a child who experienced sexual abuse from the ages of 5 to 10 by a member of my own family, a teenage cousin, and that abuse only stopped when I told my teacher, who was a mandated reporter. This is very personal to me, but it's actually really not just about being Mr. President. It's about all the children who need the adults in their lives to stand up and protect them. Religious leaders have a really special relationship with the families they serve. I think we've heard that today from some of the speakers. They have to have a very intimate relationship with these families, and I can imagine how devastating it would be for a religious leader to learn that a child had been abused in the community, particularly when we know that in most cases when children are being abused, it's by somebody known to them. It's a family member, it's a neighbor, it's a member of their church. And as devastating as that is, we need religious leaders to prioritize the safety of children and tell our Department of Children, Youth, and Families, or law enforcement, to go check on that kid and make sure they're okay. I mentioned earlier, we are one of only 5 states in the nation that does not have this requirement. And so I'm asking that we move it today. Mr. President, I'll end by saying that I personally am wildly uncomfortable with this compromise, and I want everybody to hear that. I'm wildly uncomfortable with the exemption for penitential communication. But I'm doing it because I've been asked by survivors not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good and to bring forward this compromise legislation. And I also want to say, in so many great conversations I've had with my colleagues on this bill, I appreciate the interest in having a pathway to forgiveness and redemption for those who have made mistakes and are utilizing the confessional or other penitential communication in whatever faith tradition they have to seek forgiveness and take accountability for their actions. And Mr. President, I hope that the grace that is being afforded to those who engage in penitential communication, I hope that same grace for redemption and forgiveness is extended to all sorts of people through all sorts of legislation that will be before this body today, or this year. But with that, Mr. President, I ask for your support of this legislation today and the support of the body. Thank you.
Further remarks, Senator Fortunato.
Thank you, Mr. President. So
great,
Senator
by the way.
Frame really has done a great job on
really
this
good.
piece of legislation.
And
Yeah.
Go ahead. Somebody else.
I mean, everything she just said was great. And the bit at the end where it's like, I'm uncomfortable with this because I don't think that we should be making these kinds of exceptions. But since I'm willing and doing this because of my own constituents who are saying, please just make it good enough, because good enough is better than what it is now. And
Right.
everybody in that room's willing to do good enough just so we can carve out this group over here. Fine. It's dumb, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm okay with this, but we are making a compromise to save people today, right? And so
Let's start.
she then ended it with, and I hope we're willing to do this for other groups of people who also deserve redemption, right? Because there are other people who this particular group is going to be viewing more harshly and not wanting to give the grace of a pedophile confessing to a priest, right? And so we say we all hate this crime, but we're specifically begging people to let them get treatment and to let them be encouraged and have their soul saved and be forgiven for what they've done. And no one's talking about the children.
Right. I love
and anything about them. And now I want to hear you guys also talk about the drug addicts and the homeless people and all the other people that you're more than happy to criminalize, but you're not willing to give them the same kind of considerations. At least that's what I hear when she said that. But anyways, continue.
Yeah. And I think it's her personal story, and why this is so personal to her is a story that so many people could tell. And hopefully they had someone who stepped in on their behalf to help them out of that situation. But, there are so many more problems with the system. They don't really, the success rate of prosecuting someone for the crime of child abuse is not nearly where it should be. It's hard to get the evidence or confessions or whatever they need to do it. But the primary goal is getting a child out of a situation where they're being abused, and telling someone who then tells someone else, their parents. In her case, it was a cousin. Her parents probably had no idea it was happening. And once that teacher stepped in, told authorities, probably told her parents, it changed that situation. And that's a win. Like if this kind of mandated reporting just changes a child's situations from continued abuse, then that's a win. So
100%. The goal is to get these kids to safety.
And nobody wants to
focus on them.
Like, I think nobody wants to say, I'm going to cause a lot of trouble here and unnecessarily get someone's kid taken away from their parents. Like, have we all seen that Simpsons episode where like the kids are just having a really bad day at school, and Marge is having a bad day, and the house was a mess, and like Lisa lost her shoes because the bullies took her shoes, and then she bit her tongue, and they got lice. And somebody called like child services to go and inspect their home, and they took the kids away, and then they had to go live with Flanders because they were negligent parents, right? And like it was all just a bad situation. It was just it wasn't necessarily what I think we would all say, holy crap, take that kid away from those parents, right? And so we don't want to unnecessarily do these things. And I think saying that within reason, and yes, it is unfortunately, there's no other way to do it, subjective to some degree of whether you think this is abuse, right? People sometimes don't think spanking is abuse. They do. They don't, right? Like, so we're going to have slightly different scales here, but I think there's so much obvious abuse. And so if we can just encourage people, especially in a position of power, who could maybe spot it a little easier, or we can train them to spot it a little easier, like your priests, the people we're supposed to trust more than anything. And I can't even trust them to help my kid not get predatorized by somebody else in the church. Like that's...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No,
you're not at all. No.
Investigate West is what she brought up as well. I wanted to mention that. I don't know. Can you just Google Investigate West?
Yeah. Investigate West, Jehovah's Witnesses will bring up all the reporting Wilson's done on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Read it.
Yeah.
It's something I participated in. So I gave him my personal story. And so that is in the document. It is not me personally, but me personally affected. And there's a lot of heartbreaking situations. It's not easy to read. And I would also just like to take a moment and thank, I know he can't hear me, the guy who did this investigation, for the most part, who wrote this piece. He did a lot of investigating on it, and he had to read a lot of really terrible court documents that would in great detail explain and go over cases. And so he had to read all that. And that's not an easy job to have.
No, that's gotta suck, man. It's depressing.
I think he did a really good job putting it together. And so, yeah, only a fraction. I think there was a couple other people, because it was really just locally in the state, because that was the point. If we want, like, we're not going to bring up all of the cases that happen in Florida and Texas. We're going to talk about Washington State, because this is where the law is trying to get changed. And so he really brought that together. And there's so many stories he didn't even get to. I have so many family members that have been affected by this.
Yeah.
So,
it's crazy. It's a wide problem. And Wilson appeared in a documentary that a gal, Natasha from Al Jazeera, Fault Lines documentary. If you haven't watched that, I recommend go watching that too. It's called Confessions, Silence, and Child Abuse: Secrets of the Clergy. So.
Oh wow, thank you.
Natasha Del Toro. Yeah.
I'm not sure who's doing the closing prayer tonight. Don't know. Not it.
Not it.
And then I have some words to share from Phil after we get through his part.
Okay. Awesome. Do we want to continue with this guy? Let him aggravate us a little bit.
Yeah, there's only 9 more minutes of this. I think it'll go quick.
Yeah.
I had to
As
get
far
off
as
here
laying it
now
out,
because
clarifying things.
my phone battery is about to die.
Oh, boo. Boo hiss.
I was gonna say a few more minutes, but if this is several minutes long, go ahead and go now.
Yeah, it's a few.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Have a night. Bye.
With the certain mandatory reporting options in here. But I just simply cannot bring myself to vote for this, which violates a tenet of our faith. Now, the Catholic Conference may have consulted with Senator Frame, but they didn't consult with me. They didn't consult with anybody on this side of the aisle that I know of. And so with that, I am personally going to vote no. I know it's a tough no vote for others. I hope they will join me as a First Amendment issue. And we're just going to give the Catholic Conference a pass and say perhaps they got it wrong. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, excuse you. Okay.
It's short and sweet, man.
Further remarks,
Right.
Senator Warnick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am very disappointed that amendment didn't pass. I think that would have made
we could skip
all the
her.
difference.
Yeah.
As far
I'm mad.
I'm unhappy.
This guy. I liked what this guy had to say. Yeah.
He was good. He was really.
Brad Hawkins.
Different sides of this issue. And I respect that so much. We had some very deep caucus discussions on this bill over the past couple of years. I've talked with the prime sponsor.
Caucusing.
I supported it last year and I will support it this year. And I want to tell you, Mr. President, I'm not Catholic, but I am somewhat uncomfortable with the references to the past Catholic sex abuse scandals, because I kind of see this bill as separate from that. And I believe this bill is a good bill, even if there wasn't all those scandals from so many years ago. And what it comes down to for me, for my sincerely held beliefs as a father of 2 boys who are older, a little bit older now, but they were just little ones not too long ago, is we need to protect kids. And simply put, as I understand it, if someone comes in to confess to his priest and says, I raped a 12-year-old, that should be reported. Or if someone comes in and says, hey, I have these desires and I'm going to rape a 12-year-old, that should be reported too. If you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. We need to protect kids. And I'm thankful there was some sort of compromise on this bill, and I stand in support of it. Thank you, Mr. President.
If there are
Go
no further
national.
comments, the question before the Senate is final
Right.
passage of Senate Bill 6298. The Secretary will call the roll. Bill Egan.
Yeah, so this is where they go through the actual vote. But it did pass 44 to 5. So that's great.
It's a pretty good,
Yeah.
resounding.
I think you could probably extrapolate a few of who voted against it from watching that video.
Right.
Pretty much everybody who talked against it, I'm gonna guess, and then one other dude.
So I have a friend who emailed Phil Fortunato, whatever the hell his name is.
Fortunato.
So they emailed him telling him basically that he was completely out of line with his comments yesterday and demonstrated a total lack of understanding over this bill. And so he responded to my friend by email.
Oh.
And he said, every Catholic parish in the state have undergone extensive training in recognizing any potential risk to children. I have undergone the safe environment training and was to provide that training to any person in the parish that would have contact with children. I would suggest that you read the bill instead of wishing that it said what you think it means. The bill requires a duty to warn based on a subjective assumption that something might happen, not that something has happened. You could turn in your neighbor if you thought, in your opinion, that you saw he or she might be inappropriate with children. Way too vague. The only thing I object to in this bill was the 18 words that would affect the tenet of the Catholic faith. It flies in the face of human nature to think that someone could go to confession, which in most cases is anonymous, knowing they would be turned in.
Because it's so much better to make sure that the person who's caused harm and has sinned gets redeemed over the victim and what has happened to them, and any justice for them or protection from it ever happening again. Like at this point, I don't even care if people go to jail for it. We just need to make sure they're not able to do this to anyone else. Like that's what I care about.
And I it's too long to read, but my friend is a professional writer, and his response to that email was just perfect. So
I'd like to read that.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, like why is this even a subject, dude?
Yeah. So the frustrations are not over, unfortunately. There's going to be more debates in the House, which we'll watch and cover, and maybe another chance for public comment. And I know there's a few other ex-witnesses that will try to that express the desire to comment if there was the opportunity to. So, you know, we'll see what comes in the next week or so. It's already been referred to the House Human Services Committee. So
Okay.
It'll keep
so
rolling.
It's moving.
So
like Jehovah's chariot, it's moving swiftly.
As somebody who's a resident of Washington and a concerned citizen, what could I be doing as somebody who knows pretty much nothing? Everything I've learned pretty much about Washington state legislation, I've learned from this bill. So
Me too.
and it's not a lot, but what is there anything people of Washington state could do to help support?
Yeah. So what you can do is if you Google WA or Washington SB 6298, the number of the bill, it should take you to the summary page for that. And you will find on there a button to send a comment on this bill to your legislators. So if you're in Washington, you put in your address, it'll automatically say, oh yeah, this is your senator and these are your representatives. And it'll forward the email to them and you'll get a copy of it too. So you can put your comment in on what you think of this and ask for support.
Awesome.
And yeah, I wouldn't say we'd want to overwhelm any future opportunities for comment with endless XJWs, because the more people that comment, the less time any one person has. But yeah, there might be some opportunity for comment in the next round. So
epic. I'm so thankful. As Jonathan said earlier, we really are thankful for those who are putting boots on the ground and putting not just into motion their words, but truly stepping into that role and taking action. That's excellent.
Yeah, and this whole big props to My Little Pimo for the work he's done on this, being, technically still kind of a Pimo JW, accomplishing, actual change in just a short amount of time. It's pretty cool.
Right. See what you can do and put your money where your mouth is.
And, I think a lot of people are intimidated by this process because, we're not educated on it. And I don't think people in general are educated on it either. But it's
intentionally
amazing.
So.
It's amazing how much access you can get to people if you just send some emails, put out some comments, watch some hearings, all that stuff. Things can happen if people bring attention to issues. So in your state, bring it up, contact your representatives. Some states allow you to contact your attorney general and suggest, hey, you need to look into this issue over here. So anyway, there's stuff you can do.
Mm-hmm. You can. I don't really think that the system is just. I know that. No. Just look at all the red tape to get to this point, and so many people who advocate against the clergy-penitent privilege. Like, there's so many things that you could be doing then. Like, okay, so you don't like foreign, whatever the hell that dude's name is. if you're not happy with this bill, well, what are the other things that you could be doing to stop child abuse? Do you do anything? Is there anything other than coming here to fight against something that could help? Like, truly, you're poo-pooing things that others are doing when you yourself are inactive and doing nothing to show that you put children first.
Yeah. And there's more to be done in Washington and lots of other places. Mandated reporting is just a piece of it. It would be great. I think My Little Pimo has some ideas for talking to people about look back laws, look back openings. I can't remember what the term is, but where states open a look back window for historical abuse, an opportunity to.
Okay.
Because statute of limitations is another absurd law that is in place to protect abusers and institutions.
It's the law that says it's been long enough, get over it.
Yeah. and it's shockingly short. Like, I can't remember what Washington is, but some states are like 3 years. It might be like 5 or 10 years. So, yeah.
I was just looking up RAINN. I'm pretty sure that it's RAINN that has the different states and says RAINN.
I think so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the one. Mandatory requirement children. I'm just going to copy this and put it into the chat if anybody is interested, because I think that it's important that we ask ourselves these questions, just like My Little Pimo is asking. What are the laws like in your state? Do you have mandatory reporting laws? Because many states don't. Get in contact with your representatives. Where they stand on it.
And I know a lot of people, like the commenter here, asked about news on PA. A lot of ex-witnesses are chomping at the bit to what's new in PA because we haven't heard anything for a while, but they are still working full steam ahead on this investigation. It's massive, and it's going to take time because they're doing it right. So it's good. It hasn't gone away. So
I'm excited about that one.
Yeah.
That's a surprise too.
To put the light on the cockroaches and watch them scatter.
Yeah, that's a.
I know Texas. That is super surprising that Texas.
It is right.
Such a good law, and how many conservative religious Republicans are there, and they're okay with it.
Right, and they're fine.
So. Again, the devil's in the details of how is it enforced? Are people even doing anything about it? If you got a good old boys club where nobody's going to say anything, right, and you got a tight community, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it when people don't care and people are willing to lie. And if people are willing to CYA before anything else, then you're not going to have honest reporting for people who actually care. And then there's on top of it, if they don't even care about those particular children, or they don't see what they're doing as abuse. And so you have these kinds of layers that this is why it's not perfect, and this one thing isn't going to solve everything, but it's just an added layer to help fill the holes, so the holes are smaller and smaller and smaller, so that we can catch more people and save more children from being harmed more often. It's not perfect, but that's when we need to start asking these questions in our local areas, right? Like government at best is locally. And when you find out what people are doing, that's when you actually get good functioning things that actually help people. And if that's our goal, then we shouldn't be afraid to look at it. We shouldn't be afraid to shine a light on it. We shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. And we shouldn't gaslight our community and then hold up a whole bill that's going to help protect children because I'm personally offended about my religion being told, and I'm going to ignore other people with more authority in my religion who are okay with it because I don't want it. I don't want to shine a light on this. Let's go away.
Yeah. And it's just further proof that these organizations, the views differ. There's a lot of Catholics who think that this opposition would be ridiculous. There are people who want their organization to do the right thing. Same within Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and all the others. Some of them are just clueless about how bad it is. But if they learn, hopefully they'll speak up. So anyway.
Right. We if we can just continue to move the window. There's some window. I can't think of what it's called. People keep mentioning it on TikTok, but there's like this window thing that we need to move towards that progressive direction. I don't know.
The window to the wall, or
yeah, and till the sweat drops down my
clearly.
Yeah, clearly, indeed, indubitably.
And on that note.
on that, I apologize, everybody. Yeah, see, this is what you're walking into here.
Well, hopefully this wasn't too stressful and too deep, but really this is just scratching at the surface.
Thank you. That's the
I'm gonna have to look that up. I don't know what it is. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. I enjoy it. You should look it up. Yeah.
I mean, we could. There's again many layers to this discussion. If we want to talk about what actually protects children, what can we do that's actually meaningful and reduces harm. And I think that should really be the priority. And then we should focus on how do we make sure that we catch people early, and how do we make sure that is there a reform? I think one of the guys in the thing said that by taking away the penitent privilege, then they will not have the chance to rehabilitate. And I was like, what rehabilitation?
Right.
They're fooling themselves there. It's unfortunate.
But I want to believe in redemption, and I want to believe that people who of all kinds of problems of society, harm, if we're talking about an uncontrollable urge to cause harm to somebody, that's a problem in society. And I would like to hope that we can fix it. And I think that the only way we will is if we keep shining a light on it and looking at it from as many angles as possible. And so,
if those people are sincere that they want to do the right thing, then keeping it secret isn't the right thing, and they would know that. So it's
absolutely
people who want to do the right thing. So
yeah,
anyways,
then do it. Report.
Maybe okay. Next week we'll have a lighter topic. I don't know. Are there lighter topics?
Then this probably almost anything could be considered a lighter topic.
You need a palate cleanser for sure.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. So I'd just like to thank everybody for being here tonight. Ron, for everything that you've been doing. We truly appreciate you. The community is behind you and cheering you on. Dr. Time Waster, we love you wasting your time here with us.
I'm glad I can waste your time as well. Thank you.
Is there anywhere you want to direct people to go to for your socials?
I am on TikTok at Dr. Time Waster 2.0. Because I'm locked out of the original one. It's still there. I just can't get into it. And TikTok just totally gaslights you if you try and get access to old accounts. But anyways,
totally.
So it is a moment in time. But that's pretty much the only place I am other than here on Thursday nights, where we do random semi-relatable related topics for the Apostate Coalition. It's our Thursday night book study of sorts, where we pick random topics and talk about it. So I don't know what we'll do next week, but I'm sure we'll have something to talk about. Yeah, I know, right? Weird.
Yeah, we'll figure it out by then. We have a whole
hanging
week.
out.
We don't have a prescription like in the Jehovah's Witnesses where we've got like it lined up and whatnot. We'll get there. We'll get there. What about you, Ron? Anywhere you want to direct people to go for you?
I'm probably most active on Twitter, Ron __ Pomo. But then you can find me on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, all of them. I might start a MySpace. I'm thinking about it. So.
Oh, damn.
Follow his YouTube account where he has banners like the legislation.
Another props to my little Pimo. My YouTube account got shut down, and we had like all of these videos from the last year on there. And I didn't really care about it too much after I tried what I could do. But he, again, reached out to a reporter, and a reporter emailed Google, and I got my account back. So
damn, that's awesome.
Yeah,
gotta know somebody. Shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm around.
Cool.
You certainly can find him around. And me, you know where to find me, Ryan Kaltastic, here on YouTube's and elsewhere. Somewhere you'll find me drifting out into outer space. All right, y'all. We will see you next week. Again, thanks for coming. Thank you to everybody keeping it lively in the chat. And I hope that you get to, after such a tough topic like this, get to do something to de-stress, take some breaths or whatever. This can get you in an agitated space. Hopefully we kind of like talked you down a little bit and wasn't too bad, but next week, palate cleanser. I think that's a good idea. All right. See y'all. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming.